Here, you'll find all the essential vocabulary to speak about this topic at an advanced level with confidence and fluency.
Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. I've been really looking forward to this one.
Me too.
You know, I've been kind of fascinated by this whole IQ versus EQ thing lately.
Yeah.
And you sent over some super interesting stuff, like a video analysis and a linguistic deep dive.
Yes.
Which I am so ready to get into.
Yeah, it's juicy.
So basically we're trying to figure out, is IQ really the be-all and end-all of intelligence, or does emotional intelligence play a bigger role when it comes to leadership and success and all that good stuff?
Totally.
And the video we're looking at today really jumps right into it and even brings up some pretty, big names like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and how they seem to put a huge emphasis on IQ, almost like it's a measure of someone's worth.
Well, it's interesting how IQ tests definitely measure certain cognitive abilities, problem solving, logical reasoning.
Yeah.
But they don't really capture the full picture of what makes someone effective.
Right.
Especially as a leader.
Because leading a team or, inspiring people takes more than just being able to solve a math problem.
Okay.
Yeah, the video actually references a Harvard Business Review study.
Oh, wow.
That found that EQ is a much stronger predictor of leadership success than IQ or technical skills.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about EQ then.
Okay.
The video defines it as having these 4 key components.
Right.
Self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills.
Yes.
Now, I got to admit, sometimes those terms feel a little abstract to me.
Okay.
Can you break those down a bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So self-awareness, that's basically recognizing and understanding your own emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses.
Right.
Kind of like having this inner compass that guides you and helps you understand how you affect other people.
So being able to say, okay, I'm feeling super stressed right now.
And that's probably why I'm being kind of a jerk.
Exactly.
Okay.
Self-regulation kind of builds on that self-awareness.
Gotcha.
It's about managing those emotions well.
Fair.
Even when things are tough. Remember that time you had to give that big presentation?
Oh, yeah.
You were nervous,
Mm-hmm.
but you kept it together.
I did.
Totally nailed it.
That was a good day.
That's self-regulation.
Oh, okay.
In action.
Got it. What about empathy and social skills?
So empathy, that's all about understanding other people's feelings.
Okay.
Putting yourself in their shoes.
Right.
And social skills, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Building relationships, communicating effectively.
Right.
Being able to influence people in a positive way.
So basically, EQ is all about being in tune with yourself and others.
Yes.
And then using that understanding to navigate social situations and stuff.
Exactly. And the video argues that these skills are super important for making a positive impact.
Okay.
Especially when you're in a leadership role.
Which kind of brings us back to those anecdotes about figures like Donald Trump.
Right.
The video showed some, let's say, not so flattering moments from his presidency.
Yes.
Remember that whole thing about him reportedly throwing food in Oval Office?
They do.
And all those explosive outbursts?
Uh-huh. Those are presented in the video as examples of a lack of self-regulation.
Right.
A lack of empathy.
Yeah.
And how that can create a really toxic environment.
Right.
That doesn't help anyone.
It's interesting, though, because the video also talks a lot about Elon Musk.
Right.
Who's often seen as this, super smart but kind of emotionally distant guy.
Right.
So how does that fit into the whole EQ argument?
Well, that's where it gets a little tricky. The video doesn't say that Musk has, super high EQ.
Okay.
But it does acknowledge that he's really smart.
Mm-hmm.
And that he's achieved a lot.
Right.
So it seems to be saying that while a high IQ can definitely help you be successful in some areas, It's not everything,
Gotcha.
especially when it comes to leading and inspiring others.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. So
Yeah.
even though the video doesn't come right out and say all leaders need to have super high EQ,
Right.
it's definitely making the case that emotional intelligence is like a key ingredient for effective and ethical leadership.
I think that's a great way to sum it up.
So before we jump into that linguistic deep dive you mentioned,
Okay.
I want to take a second to turn it over to you, the listener. Have you ever worked with a leader who seemed really smart on paper, but just couldn't connect with their team or inspire people to do their best work?
Yeah.
Or maybe you've had the opposite experience, someone who wasn't necessarily a genius,
Right.
but had this amazing ability to motivate and uplift everyone around them.
Yeah.
I think those kinds of real life experiences can really help us understand
Totally.
what this whole IQ versus EQ debate is all about.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to that linguistic deep dive now.
Let's do it.
You said it examines the language used in the video,
Yeah.
but how does that tie into emotional intelligence?
Well, you know what they say.
What's that?
Words matter.
True.
And this linguistic analysis looks at whether the words used in the video
Okay.
tell us anything about the emotional intelligence of the people being discussed,
Oh, interesting.
especially Musk and Trump.
So it's like we're not just paying attention to what they're saying,
Right.
but how they're saying it.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and the analysis gives some really specific examples that I think will be really helpful.
Okay, I can't wait to hear more.
Yeah, me too.
So you're saying just by looking at the words used in this video, we can like figure out something about the emotional intelligence of people like Elon Musk and Trump.
That's the idea. And what's really cool is the analysis actually points out some pretty big differences in the way they use language.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, for example, it says that Musk tends to use really precise and technical language,
No.
almost like he's making a scientific argument.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense considering his background in engineering and all that.
Exactly right. But the thing is, that kind of language, even though it's great for explaining complicated ideas,
Mm-hmm.
it can sometimes feel a bit cold or impersonal.
So it's like he's amazing at explaining the what, but maybe not so good at the why or how does this make you feel kind of thing.
You got it. And the linguistic analysis suggests that maybe this points to a lower level of empathy, or at least some difficulty expressing it through words.
Okay, interesting. So what about Trump? What does his language tell us?
Well, Trump's language is totally different from Musk's.
Yeah,
It's way more emotional and exaggerated.
that definitely tracks with his public image.
Yeah, and the analysis highlights how he often uses superlatives,
Okay.
strong adjectives,
Uh-huh.
and even inflammatory language,
Right.
which can be really effective for getting a crowd fired up,
Yeah.
but it can also come across as manipulative or insincere.
So it's like he's playing on people's emotions, but maybe not in a way that builds real understanding or connection.
Exactly, and this goes back to what we were saying before about EQ. It's not just about showing your emotions.
Right.
It's about using them intelligently,
Uh-huh.
ethically,
Yeah.
to build trust and create positive relationships.
Okay. I see how this language analysis is adding a whole other dimension to our conversation.
Yeah.
So we've got Musk, who's like super articulate, but maybe a bit emotionally distant.
Right.
And then we have Trump, who's very expressive,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not always genuine or constructive.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that neither of these styles is inherently good or bad.
Right?
They're just different ways of communicating, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
That's a really important point because I think sometimes we get caught up in labeling people as like high EQ or low EQ.
Right.
But it's probably more accurate to think of it as a spectrum with a lot of nuance.
Absolutely, and I think this highlights how important it is to understand your own communication style.
Yeah.
And how it affects other people.
Okay.
Be aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and keep working on improving your emotional intelligence.
This reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the idea that emotional intelligence can be developed.
Right.
It's not like you're just born with it and that's it.
Yeah, the video touches on that too.
Yeah.
Our genes might give us a starting point,
Yeah.
but research shows we can totally improve our EQ
Okay.
through conscious effort and practice.
So it's like learning a new skill. Like maybe you're not a natural musician,
Exactly.
but if you put in the time and effort, you can learn to play an instrument.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's the same with emotional intelligence.
Cool.
If we work on our self-awareness, learn to manage our emotions better, and develop our empathy,
Uh-huh.
we can become better communicators,
Yeah.
better leaders,
Right.
and ultimately happier people.
That's pretty inspiring because it means we have the power to change and grow.
Totally. Yeah.
It's not like we're stuck with whatever level of EQ we happen to be born with.
Exactly. And the benefits go way beyond just our personal lives.
Really?
Yeah. Better relationships, improved teamwork, increased productivity,
Wow.
even greater overall well-being.
So basically, investing in your EQ is like investing in every area of your life.
You could say that.
Okay. I'm really curious about how we can actually go about improving our EQ.
Yeah.
Are there any like specific things we can do or exercises we can try?
Oh, there's tons of stuff out there these days.
Okay.
Books, articles, workshops, online courses.
Uh-huh.
You name it. There's no shortage of information on how to boost your emotional intelligence.
So it's not enough to just read about it. We have to actually put it into practice.
Exactly. You have to make a conscious effort to be more self-aware, manage your emotions better, and connect with people on a deeper level.
You know what? I think it would be really cool to do a whole episode on like practical tips for improving EQ.
Oh, I love that idea.
Okay, awesome.
Let's do it.
So, listener, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We talked about the limits of IQ, the
Yeah.
power of EQ,
Yeah.
and even dug into that fascinating world of language analysis.
Right. And we challenged some of those old assumptions,
Uh-huh.
unpacked some pretty complex ideas,
Totally.
and hopefully got you thinking about all this in a new way.
But before we wrap things up,
Okay.
I want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
If emotional intelligence is really so crucial for good and ethical leadership,
Mm-hmm.
should we be demanding more of it from the people in charge?
That's a big one.
It is something to think about.
It is.
So I encourage you to really consider this question,
Okay.
to think about what qualities you look for in a leader
Yeah.
and how you can help create a world where emotional intelligence isn't just an idea, but a reality.
That's such a powerful message.
So big thanks to our awesome expert for guiding us through this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And of course, a huge shout out to you, our amazing listener, for joining us.
Thanks for being here.
Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we talked about today.
And until next time, keep diving deep and keep those brains buzzing.
You know, it feels like we've done more than just compare IQ and EQ today.
Yeah.
Like we've actually kind of redefined what it means to be successful.
That's a good point. I mean, for so long, success has been all about like money and status and achievements.
Right, exactly.
But maybe true success is about something more, you know?
Totally. Like, what if it's about living a meaningful life
Yeah.
full of purpose and connection?
Exactly. And that's where I think emotional intelligence comes in, because if you can't connect with people,
Right.
understand their needs, inspire them, motivate them, then what's the point of all those external achievements?
Yeah, it's like that video we talked about.
Yeah.
We mentioned this concept of efficacy.
Right.
Like being able to actually make a positive difference in the world.
And that takes more than just smarts.
Totally.
It takes empathy,
Yeah.
compassion, the ability to connect with people.
So EQ is kind of like a requirement for making the world a better place.
Yeah, I think so. For ourselves and for future generations.
It's like realizing that we're all connected. and that what we do affects other people.
Exactly. When we work on our emotional intelligence,
Right.
we're not just helping ourselves.
Yeah.
We're creating a more compassionate and just society.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It makes me think about how we can encourage more emotional intelligence in our communities and the world.
It starts with us,
Yeah.
being empathetic,
Yeah.
really listening to people, communicating with compassion.
Right, like setting a good example.
Exactly. And it's about holding our leaders accountable, too.
Yeah, making sure they're showing those same qualities.
Yeah, we need to value emotional intelligence just as much as we value intelligence.
Absolutely. So, listener, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I want you to think about your own emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
What are you good at? Where could you grow? And how can you use your EQ to make a difference?
Right, even if it's a small difference.
Because emotional intelligence isn't something you're just stuck with. It's something you can work on and improve over time. So be patient with yourself, be curious, and be open to learning new ways to connect with yourself and with other people.
And don't forget that even little things can make a big difference.
So true. A kind word, a listening ear, a moment of empathy.
Yeah, those things matter.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into IQ versus EQ.
It's been a great conversation.
Huge thanks to our amazing expert for sharing all their wisdom.
Happy to be here.
And of course, a huge shout out to you, our awesome listener, for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all those fascinating sources we talked about.
And until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep diving deep.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.